Poke the Bear is brought to you by Prizepicks and the Gametime app.
And welcome into Poke the Bear, episode 298, presented by Prizepicks and Gametime tickets. My name is Conor Ryan. Once again, we are joined by the esteemed, the ever knowledgeable Ty Anderson of 98.5. This what's up, Ty? How you doing?
What is going on today, Connor? How we doing?
Doing well. I guess the Bruins are also doing well, considering that they did win on Thursday against Ottawa, a game that I think a lot of us were bracing for bad news. Bad news depending on how you're looking at this season and what this team should do, maybe. But I think that was a game. You look at how the Bruins were smoked on Wednesday in Newark against the Devils, not competitive at all in their D zone. All of a sudden going to a matchup against a desperate Ottawa team coming off of a loss to the Rangers. You're like, is this going to be kind of the straw that breaks the camel's back? Are the Bruins going to have like a Oilers level loss on home ice that really sets the conversation of like, all right, I think we've known for a little while now, but this team ain't it. They got to make some tough decisions. And what do, Ty? They go out and they win the game. They win 2-0. Really strong defensive effort. Joonas Korpisalo shutout. What did you kind of take away from that win and how the Bruins did respond in that game?
Yeah, I mean, speaking off the top here, I think they were the lock of all locks to win that game. They get their asses kicked and they come out and they win the next game. That typically has been how it's gone this year, for better or worse. And so in that respect, I fully went into the game on Thursday night going, they're going to win this game. They're going to win this game if only to prolong the agony or the misery or the uncertainty that people feel right now when it comes to this team and what they should or what they will do at the March 7th trade deadline. But ultimately, I think you look at that game, like that game is how they have to play, right? Like that's how they have to play every game. You got to be stout on the PK. You got to get some big saves because as we've talked about, they don't have the offensive talent. I mean, Jesus, look at that bottom six and look at that defense last night. Just look at the names. I don't want to get bogged down with like, yeah, they have injuries, they have this, they have that. Look at the names. That is a lineup that you see on September 30th, Sunday, 5 p.m. against the New York Rangers preseason game at TD Garden. That is that kind of lineup. And it's not a knock on those players, but this is the roster that they have right now, right? And so they're going to have to win like that. They're going to have to dig in and grind out games and white knuckling, as we've called it in the past, and going back to last year, they had wins like that. They had a win like that. That was an example of that. I mean, the people that may not know, you and I sit next to each other in the press box at TD Garden. The noises that were coming out of our mouths over the final 3 minutes of that game, just kept waiting for the game tying goal. That's what it was. It was a white knuckle ride. And so that's how they have to play. That's how they have to win. It's hard to win like that for 82 games, obviously, as we know. But a microcosm or maybe a sign of what has to be there for this team to make a real push, I think, between now and April.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the frustrating thing, right, Ty, when you look at this team? Because, that is the blueprint, right? When the Bruins were playing well after Sacco first took over, it was kind of that low event, take care of the D zone, limit high danger looks. I think Ottawa only had 4 in the game, which was encouraging. Bruins weren't a perfect 4 for 4 on the PK. Again, not anything that's revolutionary. They're not reinventing the wheel here. It's not Curry hitting 40-foot three-pointers or anything like that. It's taking care of your own business in the D zone, playing simple, smart hockey. The Bruins this year have not shown that they can adhere to that consistently, whether it's eventually the offense just isn't, you're not generating enough offense and you're cheating and it leads to odd man rushes or breakdowns. It seems like it's a simple strategy to adhere to, but this team, when you look at the deficiencies all across the lineup, it's just something that, and not say that teams can't stick to it. There are plenty of teams that have gone on long runs off of playing low event, stringent, kind of strict hockey in their own zone. But this team, it's just, as much as we look at this game and the way they played, bouncing back from adversity, Joe Sacco said this team has dealt with adversity a lot this year, that in the microcosm or through the lens of just one game, you could look at this game and be like, what a great response. This team, they have gone through a lot of adversity this year. They've taken their lumps time and time again, like, this could be the start of something. But we've gone through this situation like 10 times that I can't wrap my head around this being the start of something, because how many times has this team bounced back from a tough game, been kind of that Jekyll and Hyde team, get a good result, feel like they're building towards something, and then get smoked the next game, and then lose 2 or 3, win 2 against it. We've seen this story before, and it's why this team, especially this year, where they've got all the hallmarks of a team that you want to root for, right? Like, if they get in the playoffs as the 8 seed, and they've really struggled, but like they can put it all together, and Swayman and these guys, like, they're a team that if they get in, you would think they'd be a good team to root for, but they've been so frustrating this year that you can't buy in until you see it of this team, unless this team goes like 11 of 12 and they smoke Colorado and beat a lot of really tough teams in a row. What does this one game mean in the grand scheme of things? I'm not investing too much in it.
Yeah, it means nothing. It means nothing. And that is perhaps unfair, but it's also the bed that this team has made for themselves. Like that is how I feel about that, is that they have had better wins than the one they had on Thursday night, and they have yet to parlay that into something greater. And this team is still up against it in terms of their margin for error here when it comes to making the playoffs. A lot of the places still have them as the odds as a favorite to miss the playoffs, even after a 4-point game essentially last night. So they've dug themselves into quite a hole here, right? And how they get out of it is really up to them, but it's not going to get any easier. Like you have Winnipeg, you have the Rangers, you have Vegas coming up soon. Like, you got a lot of games here that you look at and go, I don't love them in that spot, and so I do think, there is this feeling here, not only when it comes to like the individual wins and them, not mattering per se, but also it's like, are you too far along? Are you too far gone here in terms of the odds and the math? And like, you got to win all of these games. It feels like you got to win every single game. And if you have to win it in this fashion, that's going to be hard. It's just going to be really hard. And you watch a team like Columbus, right? And you watch them and like, yeah, they're not a perfect team, but they can score the bejesus out of the puck. Like they will regularly put up 5 goals, especially on home ice. On home ice, they're fantastic. The Bruins don't really have that. So what is their escape valve? What is there a way to turn a loss into a win? It's goaltending and the PK, right? And those things have been up and down all year long, right? Swayman's looked really good of late. Korpisalo, I thought, was really good on Thursday. I thought he made some big saves on Monday, too. But, you got to have those guys clicking at like a 920, 925, it feels like, just to get in at this point, given the scoring issues that you've had this year.
Yeah, and I even think, like, this team, as you said, like, they've kind of dug the hole that they're in right now. It's like, how often, like, you look at it 2 years ago, and again, that team was just a wagon, but where you had games where 3 or 4 guys that maybe didn't do anything the game before contributed. Like, you had so much depth, you had so many guys breaking through, and you had that last weekend when you played Ottawa. Like, you had Beecher got a goal, right? You had Vinny Lettieri gets a goal. Pastrnak, again, had a really impactful 3-point game, I believe. Had everything going right. You erased a 2-goal deficit. That should have been a game where you win 5-3, and you're like, all right, they got something here, right? That was maybe the last time where we were like, all right, you beat Tampa, you beat Florida, you're feeling good about where you are, and then that happens. And it's like that one, you can't. Even Joe Sacco mentioned it on Thursday, like they felt they gave that game away, which they did. And it's like when you're a team like that, and you have to work so hard for your offense, work so hard to have breaks go your way. And then you have a game like that where it should have been a standout victory, critical game against Ottawa. They were right behind you in the standings, and then you cough it up. And all the goodwill you built, you kind of just fumble there. And it's like, that's why you can't get too invested into what the day-to-day is right now. You have to see it over weeks. And, like, we've been burned way too many times. I'm not just saying us. Like, Bruins fans have had 7, 8, 9 times this year where it's felt like this team was starting something special. And then, I mean, look at that road game against the Blues right before Montgomery was fired. that comeback win. You're like, wow, like this team's really been fighting it. They've really been treading water. Get that win, and then Montgomery's fired less than a week later, right? Like it's been time and time again this year with this team.
Well, and the other part too, like you mentioned, like that game, like yeah, you come back and you win that game, but then 4 days later you do the inverse against that very same opponent in your building, and it's like,
yep,
all right, well there goes that, and so yeah, like they have lost the benefit of the doubt until proven otherwise, and like that sucks for them, but it's also kind of where they are right now, and I do think that I think that having the top line clicking the way it's clicking right now with Morgan Geekie and David Pastrnak and Pavel Zacha, like that has helped. But what's going on below that, right? Like that's the real question, because if you're a one-line team, teams can really kind of focus in on that and take that away. And we saw that, with a better roster and a better overall team when the Bruins had, the Bergeron, Pastrnak, Marchand line, where if you want to focus on them, you take them away. It became harder to win games, right? And this team, if someone does that to the Geekie, Pastrnak, Zacha line, well, you don't have as many pieces as those teams did to overcome that, and so that's a worry for me there. It's also just like you gotta get some guys back here soon. It feels like for me, you got to get some guys back because I think you're gonna hit that point where, listen, it's great to see Mason Lohrei taking the ball and running with it, but you need your big dogs because this team is not deep enough to skate without those guys for an extended stretch of time. And especially when you have forwards that are hot and cold offensively below that top line. And so it just feels like I think the best way to describe it for Bruins fans right now is like, it feels like you're walking through just a great big football field full of landmines. And you're like, I hope this step is okay, but I have no confidence that it is.
Yeah, it's like that or like Fraga. You feel like you've made it through one lane and all of a sudden an 18-wheeler just like completely bowls you over. It's like if you're just waiting for the other shoe to drop, which is not a fun way to go through a season of a team you're very invested in, of like just waiting for the next calamity to happen. It's not great.
No, and it's not even like you're on the highway and it's a Cosmic Brownie truck next to you and you're like, Lord, if you love me, tip that over.
Yeah, no, it's not that. No, it's actually
my favorite TikTok. I love that TikTok so much. Sorry.
It's like it's like the lumber truck from Final Destination 2. So like, not only do you get hit, but then like a redwood hits you on the way back. Like it's not pleasant at all, I would say. But you know what is pleasant, Ty? You know what is pleasant is an ad read from our good friends over at Prizepicks. Let me tell you, the big game, Ty, is almost here, and it's now or never. So don't miss out on the last football game of the season with Prizepicks, the best place to win cash while watching the big game. Prizepicks is also giving away a free pick for the big game, where one of the starting quarterbacks will only need to throw 1 yard. 1 yard, Ty. It's pretty friggin' easy here.
A
1
yard
to win. A single yard. I don't know, Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts might have to run into some issues there, but he just needs 1 yard to win. If you're correct on at least one more stat projection, you can win real cash. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, Prizepicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least two players for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash as you run your game all season long on Prizepicks. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play just $5. Don't need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prizepicks is the best way to win real money this football season. Which players are going off? Which ones aren't? Make your picks in less than 60 seconds and turn your sports opinions into real money all season long on Prizepicks. Check out the promos tab to tail any of our Super Sweat Millie Winners big game lineups. If you tail a lineup that goes 3 for 3, you can win a split of $1 million in promo funds. Prizepicks puts their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my picks hit, I can get my money in as quick as 15 minutes. Prizepicks also invented the flex play, which means you can still cash out if your lineup isn't perfect. You can double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. There's really no shortage of ways to participate in Prizepicks, especially with the big game nearly upon us. This week on Prizepicks, I'm looking at the football board and selecting Josh Allen for more than 230 passing yards, please beat the Chiefs, and Terry McLaurin for more than one touchdown. It's really that easy. So cook up hot takes with your friends and win real money this football season when you and your crew run your game on Prizepicks. Download the Prizepicks app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS on the Prizepicks app to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prizepicks, run your game. Shout out once again to our good friends over at Prizepicks. Ty, you kind of mentioned it when you look at the fact that the Bruins, the margin of error this team has right now is so slim. It has helped you out a little bit, as unsustainable as it might be, that one, David Pastrnak is going sicko mode again, as Evan and the kids say, and you're getting good goaltending, both from Jeremy Swayman over an extended stretch, and I think Korpisalo these last couple of games has helped keep you afloat during, again, stretches where this team really was on the ropes and could have been handed the knockout punch by a team like Ottawa.
Yeah, it's huge, and I think that Pastrnak, his play here has been really, I think, impressive for a little while now. I would even go back to the loss where they got their asses absolutely kicked 8 times over, in fact, by the Winnipeg Jets on, I believe it was December 10th, I want to say it was that game. I would say that since then, Pastrnak has really tried to take his game to another level, as if the light went off in his head and said, Jesus, we are not going to do anything if I don't get my game going, or if I don't
do it myself.
Exactly. No, he's Thanos putting on the Infinity, gauntlet here and going to town. And so, I think he's been phenomenal. I really do. And yes, he's going to turn the puck over. You know why? Because it's on his stick more than any other player on the team.
Holy shit, Ty.
And there are times he's going to force plays and it's going to go the other way.
Yes,
but
of course.
Right now, you can't look at his production and go, okay, he's not making up for that and then some, right? And that's the name of the game with guys that are high risk, high reward players, is that, okay, are you a net positive? David Pastrnak has been a net positive, and when he's not on the ice, their offense is vanilla, it's stale, it's boring. And I think really what I like about David Pastrnak's game right now is that I feel like he's making his line mates better, right? And that's the sign of a great superstar. I tweeted the stat last night during the game. Only 3 players have more points than David Pastrnak since December 14th. Those players are Nathan MacKinnon, Mitch Marner, and Leon Draisaitl. Now, what is the common factor that you would say with those 3 players and their roster, let's just say?
Oh, I was going to say the common thing with all those guys, they'll turn the puck over. But
that is
I would
true.
say for those other
true.
players, yeah, I would say for those players, I think they've a bit of a stronger supporting cast, I would say. I think they're dishing the puck to other all-star players.
Yes. You have Mikko Rantanen, you have Cale Makar, you have Austin Matthews, you have John Tavares, who, even though he's older, I think he's been really good this year for Toronto. Morgan Riley, great offensive defenseman, as we know. Matty Nyes, who I think is a fantastic player for Toronto. And then, obviously, Connor McDavid. And then, okay, what's that for the Bruins?
Morgan Geekie.
It's Morgan Geekie. It's Pavel Zacha. It's Brad Marchand on occasion. It's Mason Lowry. It's been really impressive, I think, in that regard, when you really dive in on what Pastrnak has done and his value for the team for the last month and a half now. And I really do think it's been he and Swayman for the Bruins. I firmly believe that. Now it's nice that Korpisalo, as you mentioned, is getting some run here, finding his game again. Back-to-back wins, first time he's done that in a while, I want to say. But it's interesting. It's going to be Pastrnak and the goaltending. Like that.
Yeah.
That is what holds the key for this team getting to the playoffs or not qualifying. That's we're 50 games in. We know what they are. It's going to be Pastrnak and it's going to be the goaltending. That is what's going to carry this team to the playoffs if they get there.
Yeah, and I almost feel like that's the one silver lining if you're trying to find a positive, is that if there's anything that I can project on this team that has been so Jekyll and Hyde, is that I think, especially over, again, the last month plus, is David Pastrnak's been on a heater. We've seen him do that years and years and years now. And if there's one thing that I could see happening, is him continuing to be that cheat code for this team. And maybe that's the one thing you're holding out hope for, is that even if this team is going to be up and down, he's going to do enough to keep you somewhat afloat, keep you in games. He's done it before. And I think, again, the last couple of years, especially, it's not to change sports, but it's like the whole Josh McDaniels thing of like, oh, he had Brady all those years. It's like, well, look what he did without Brady, and they were still pretty good. It's like David Pastrnak's been a 40, 50, 60 goal scorer when this team was at its peak. And then last year, with a pretty overachieving team, as we now know, had 110 points. And this year, he's still going to be an over a point per game guy. Could be a 90-point player with a putrid power play and a disjointed roster that really does not have a lot of scoring talent around him. Like, I think this season and last year's has validated just, yes, he's got warts like any maybe offensively minded player, but it's not nearly going to be, he alone can really be the cheat code this team desperately needs right now.
Yeah, and ideally, like, you want to get him more help, right? Like, you want him to have more help, more support around him. But, it's similar to what we talked about earlier. Like, they're too far gone. They're too far gone, I think, to address that this season. I think there are things they could do in-house to try to help get some more scoring punch, some more talent on this roster. But, this is still a team that I can't in good faith sign off on the idea of them buying in any respect. I just can't do it. I'd love to, but I just don't. Like, their margins are so slim, right? And they've already mortgaged so much of their future, right? And I said this last week, and I feel the same way now. Like, you are a gambler being pulled away from the table. It's like, stop chasing your losses. Just go back to work for a little while, build up your funds, and then go back to the casino. Like you got to kind of do that, I feel like, if you're the Bruins right now. And I think what's interesting is I think they can do both. I do feel like they could sell and still compete. And we've talked about this team a lot, right? The Capitals. We talked about the Capitals. The Capitals traded Kuznetsov, Mantha, and Edmondson and still made the playoffs. Like they still did it. And so I think when we sit here and go, you can't buy, I'm okay with a soft sell. If you're soft selling guys like, I don't know, let's just say Trent Frederick, right? Or Justin Brazeau. If you do that and you still can't make the playoffs, well, then you weren't doing it anyways. I don't want to be disrespectful to those players, but that's kind of how I feel. Like, your core should still be strong enough where you can still make some stuff happen, I think, if you're the Bruins. And so I'm okay with not buying. I'm also okay with them soft selling here.
Yeah, no, it's going to be interesting to see how they approach that, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second here. But before we do that, take another quick break here from our friends over at Gametime Tickets. The holiday season has come and gone, but rejoice, sports fans, because the NFL playoffs are in full swing. And yes, the Patriots did not make it. No, they were very bad this year. Did not go according to plan, I would say. But if you want to grab seats to any other NFL playoff game this winter, or catch a Bruins or a Celtics game at the Garden, you got to go with Gametime Tickets. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and the lowest price guarantee, Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying NFL, NBA, and NHL tickets. The Patriots might be done, but do you want to catch the Bruins against the Avalanche in January? How about the Celtics against Ime Udoka and the Rockets? Gametime Tickets has you covered. Gametime Tickets app makes it easy to sort through which specific game, concert, or other event you want to attend and shows you the best spots available to take in the action. Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks, which makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Gametime Tickets also has you covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry, including event cancellation protection, 24-hour return guarantee, job loss assurance, and on-time ticket delivery. So what are you waiting for? Take the guesswork out of buying football tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Game time. All right, Ty, you kind of touched on it before there, but when you look at this team and how they can kind of toe the line there, it's almost like, I do agree that if you are going to be a soft seller and you're accelerating what should be a very busy offseason where you have to be really bold to kind of, retool this team on the fly, you can still do that without without relinquishing or completely bottoming out. And maybe some fans want them to just move on from guys like Coyle and Carlo and Marchand and some of these guys and really uproot things, not trade Pastrnak or anything like that, like starting from scratch, which is never going to happen. But if you can do that too, and I think that almost is like the best of both worlds. Maybe it's not the right decision overall in terms of being a soft seller, in terms of really kind of, freeing up cap space and tearing up some of this roster. But I'd rather this team acquire another couple of second-round picks or a first-round pick or something and make the playoffs and get bounced in 5-6 games than do nothing and get bounced in 5-6 games. Like, you can kind of, cross off the checklist of you get your playoff fix, you get some of the excitement, you get some of the intrigue of like, hell, maybe Swayman gets hot and they go on a run here. Oh, they get bounced, but you have another first-round pick to add to your stockpile there, and you can go into this offseason with a little bit more cap space, a little bit more of a purpose to really kind of fix what has been a season gone awry. Like, I don't think that's totally out of the question in terms of how this team can approach things.
Yeah, and there are two numbers here that I just want to go back and look up because I wanted to verify, right? When the Capitals started selling, they were 2 points out of the playoffs. Like,
yeah.
When they sold Orlov to the Bruins in 2023, they were, I think, 6 points out. So they were still within striking distance of a wild card spot. And last year, let's just stick with last year. Then last year, Washington backs into the playoffs with a 4-4-2 record over their final 10 games. They were under 500 over the final 10 games of the season, but they backed their way in, right? And this brings us to right now, right? Like, we look at the teams that are around the Bruins or are chasing the Bruins, right? That's Tampa, that's Ottawa, that's Montreal. Do we think all three of those teams are going to be in there in mid-April, early mid-April? Like, I don't know. I think 2 of the 3 will be. So let's just say Montreal falls off. You also have Columbus, who, again, I like. Great story. They have obvious question marks, though. In goal, do they have the goaltending to carry them? Can they continue to outscore their mistakes for another 3 months? New York Rangers, we've seen them be up and down. They might be sellers as well. And so, this is all a really long way of saying that the East is kind of, it's okay. Yeah. It's okay. So could you, in theory, again, sell off guys and back into the playoffs? Now, I think the question that then becomes, Connor, who are you doing that to obtain that? Because if you sell off certain guys, that's more of an aggressive sell. And there are guys, if you talk about getting a second-round pick, I'm saying Charlie Coyle, and I'm saying Andrew Peeke. And so, like, okay, can you still compete if you get rid of those guys? I think there are levels to this that are really what the actual discussion is for the Bruins front office right now, between now and the deadline. It's not, are we going to sell? It's what level of retooling are we committing ourselves to? And what do you want them to do? That'd be my question to you. What do you want them to do in terms of the level? On a scale of 1 to 4, let's just say, what level do you want them selling?
Yeah, I would probably, again, it's almost like if the Bruins are in a choose your own adventure and there's 4 or 5 different scenarios, it's like you can either stay the course, maybe make the playoffs and get bounced early, which I think is the worst possible thing of just standing pat and not doing anything, or doing short term, giving up another second, a 2026 second for Jason Zucker. No, don't do that. And don't stay the course to only either miss the playoffs or get bounced in the first round. If you sell, a Frederick or a Peeke or someone like that, I'm all for it, because I think it still puts you in a chance to, one, recoup some assets while being in the mix. Even if you want to pitch a more aggressive, 2.5 on that 4-point scale, right? Of if it includes a guy like Coyle, that maybe does hurt your chances of making the playoffs now, but you can get a pretty good piece back for that kind of player. That's something you also have to weigh. I wouldn't be totally opposed to that, where, again, I don't see the Bruins doing a full teardown, anything like that, where people are going to talk about the big names, the foundational pieces. I don't think that's happening. But if it is something where the price is right and where so many teams are also sandwiched together, there may not be that many sellers this year. There's a lot of teams that are bad that weren't going to be, selling or doing anything. They're year 2 or 3 of an extended rebuild. They're just letting things marinate. A lot of those teams out west, stay the course. We know we're going to suck. We're not doing that. The Bruins are one of the rare teams where they have a couple of assets that a lot of other teams, I think, would covet, where you look at Frederick, Peak, Coyle. I think a lot of teams could look at a guy like Coyle and how versatile he is and be like, that could be our 3C, the missing piece we need. Carlo's another guy. I wouldn't move Carlo because I think it's really tough to replace a guy like that, a right shot D.
That's gonna be a hockey. That's gonna be a hockey trade. That's how I would look at a guy like that.
Yeah, the only other option that I'd be intrigued with is if like the Bruins make hockey trades and they're moving out NHLers for guys that can help them now, but most importantly for the future. Like I don't know if JT Miller falls into that category. If you think that's more of a short term, like I don't like that contract, but I could be convinced, right, of like a guy like that who helps you right now and can be a 80, 90 point guy for the next couple of years, a guy that kind of is known for being intense, for being a cage rattler, which I don't necessarily view as a bad thing. Like you could sell me on that if that is your move and you're shaking up the roster to be like, hey, we need to change things here. I'd be fine with that. I think the worst thing you can do in this extremely rambling, long response I gave to your question, Ty, is standing
no,
pat.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah, is either standing pat or making short-term gains just for the sake of this year. It has to be looking to the future in some capacity. And you can check off a lot of boxes by either making sells now while still being competitive and maybe sneaking to the playoffs, and then who the hell knows what happens, or making more seismic hockey trades, which I could see coming this offseason. But if you get a jump start now and JT Miller is going for how cheap apparently this dude is right now, I wouldn't even post that either. You got to make some sort of change, though. Standing pat or mortgaging the future even more just to sneak in this year when like this team has done little to prove that they have what it takes. That can't happen this year, especially.
Well, and I think to your point, you know, that you mentioned there, like they have. Okay, so the NHL has just 4 teams that are more than 10 points out of a playoff spot right now. You have Buffalo, you have San Jose, and you have Chicago. And it's interesting. If you look at a team like San Jose, you go, oh, they're going to sell, right? They're going to sell. They don't have a lot they're going to be selling, though. Like, look at their roster. A lot of guys that they have are under contract beyond this year. You're talking like a guy like Tyler Toffoli, right, who's seemingly been traded every deadline. He's got a multi-year deal. They're not moving him. They like what he can do for their team, you know, especially as a veteran, bringing Will Smith and Macklin Celebrini along. Like, they're not going to move that guy. Really, you look at their roster. They have Luke Kunin. They have Mikael Granlund, Jan Ruta, and Cody Ceci. Like, that's kind of it for them in terms of, like, who they're going to be moving, all pending UFAs. Chicago has Taylor Hall. You know, Chicago's another team, though, that like they're kind of building what looks like a culture there for Connor Bedard and the younger players. So, you know, how many guys are they moving off? They have a lot of guys that still have term, you know, still on their contracts. Off the top of my head here, you know, you have Ryan Donato, you have Pat Maroon, you have Craig Smith. Like, okay, you can move those guys if you want, but there's not a lot of sellers, right? And so does that juice up the prices for a team that, you know, like the Bruins, who could say, you know what, we got to retool here. And if you can get if guys that would typically net you a 3rd round pick are now netting you seconds, or guys that would net you a second are now getting you a first, it's like you got to kind of make that call. I feel like that's what a savvy GM does. And, you know, Don Sweeney's one of the longest tenured GMs in the league. He's always been a buying GM, but to keep your job for 10 years, you have to have trust in all situations, right? And so if you're the Bruins, you trust this guy to maximize value however possible. And so that might be the play here for them. And, you know, if I were putting a number on it myself, I kind of want them to, I would say, moderately aggressively sell. I'd put them at a 3 out of 4. I would. Mm-hmm. I love Charlie Coyle. I absolutely freaking love him as a person, as a player. I love what he can bring. He's also turning 33. He also gave you probably the best he can ever give you a year ago. He's got 1 more year left on his contract after this year. That's a guy I look at and go, if someone came knocking and offered me a first, you know, or a conditional second that became a first, that's hard for me to say no. It just is. It's just, this is the spot they're in, you know, and I think the window is closed. And now it's about loading up for that next window. How long are you rebuilding the house and those windows? And trading guys like that could accelerate it. It's going to hurt now, but 2 years from now, you might be a little bit closer than you would be if you simply hang on to him and then he leaves as a 35-year-old a year and a half from now, or a 34-year-old. Like that's kind of how I look at a guy like that. And I feel the same way about Andrew Peak. I feel the same way about
Frederick.
Yeah, just like guys that I'm like, it sucked to lose them, but it might make your marathon a half marathon in terms of getting back there. And that's how you kind of have to look at things right now, I think, if you're the Bruins.
Yeah, it's almost like, even if like you're not as aggressive, let's say you're a level 2 of that 4, right? And it's like Peak, who, again, you got it for a 3rd round pick last year, but if there's a team that's desperate and you're one of the few sellers, could he go for like a 2nd or something like that? If that happens, if the prices get wacky, and like, if you told me a month ago that Frederick could be like 2 seconds or like a late 1st or something like that, if a team gets, like, you look at like the Jeannot trade, right, where that was a wacky trade and teams overvalue what he brings. If you like move those 2 players, like Peak and Frederick, and you get a couple of seconds or a late 1st, and you're uprooting your team, yes, but you're also not, I don't think, devastating parts of your lineup that like means you're already like, all right, you're going to plummet down the bottom of the standings. And even if you do, let's say if you went to level 4 or level 3, not level 4, you're not trading Pastrnak, but level 3 and it's Coyle, and you guys flip out of the playoff picture, the standings are also so stacked that if you like, drop 7 of your last 9 or something, hell, you could like get 1st round picks, get draft capital back, free up cap space before the cap potentially explodes this year. It could be like 97 million is what they're saying now.
Yeah, I was texting with an agent who has basically told me like, hey, get ready. This cap is going to explode.
Yeah, so you can free up money that way. And like with so many teams are sandwiched together, if you like plummet a little bit and not have, you don't necessarily have to have a ghastly record. You could also have like the 10th, the 9th pick, like the way that some of these teams are sandwiched together. So I think this Bruins team, like in this organization, cares a lot about the optics. They don't ever want to admit to put up the white flag, but I feel like especially this team and like this fan base, when they've gone through a year like this, if you do say like, hey, this ain't it, we're punting, but like we're going to be bold and we're going to get our shit right because we got a 60 goal scorer, we've got a number 1 goalie, 2 top pairing defensemen, both all in their prime, we're going to get this shit right. Bruins fans can be like, yeah, it's fine. We're not like the Patriots of 2 years of just misery of like, when's this going to end? Like, no, shit went wrong this year. We're going to restock the cupboard now, get some prospects in here that are going to be worth investing in, worth seeing, and we're going to reshape this and be bold and try to find other ways to reshape this roster. I don't think Bruins fans be like, what a calamity. After 8 straight years of making the playoffs, this year everything fell apart. It sucks. It's frustrating. And listen, like, we are all in the same boat. We all thought this team was going to be in the playoffs. There's nothing better as a fan, as someone covering hockey who loves the game, than the adrenaline of a playoff run. There's legitimately nothing more exciting. I look forward to it every single spring. It would really, really suck if it's not here. But if this team goes in with a plan, is bold, can, see the forest over the trees for this year, when just everything that could have gone wrong has gone wrong, and get a jump start on it, I don't think you're seeing an uproar. I think a lot of people would exhale that this team can recognize sometimes shit goes haywire and you bounce back and you fight for another day. And I don't think there would be an uproar if that is what the case is,
Yeah, and the other part of it too is that like I think, speaking as an observer of this team and what I like about them, it's like for me, I want the Bruins to be in a position where they can retool on the fly. They can add some big money players, from teams that are looking at cap space, or they got to pay one of their young stars. So now they're trading a player who is still an effective player, but is now out of their price point range. I want the Bruins to be in that position, right? And that's going to require making some harder calls, because I think that, we've alluded to this before in the past on prior podcasts, but like there's nothing worse than being middle of the pack and also being right up against the cap, which is what the Bruins kind of are. And so I think when you talk about a retool, I think the cap component is such an important element of that we may, whistle by. And it's like, yeah, the cap is going up. It's also going up for every other team as well. You're not the only team that's gaining cap space. And so I think that if you can make some calls that unjumble that picture just a little bit, and put you back in striking position for top-end talent on the trade market, both in terms of acquiring depressed assets or big money contracts and not having to pay the absolute premium that you do every time. I want them to get closer to that because I think that's like an underrated cheat code. Listen, it's not GTA City Weapons Code 3, but it is Weapons Code 1, and you get a good little arsenal with if you can do that and master that, and I think that's something that I want Don Sweeney to prove that he can do, right? Like I think he gets a lot of shit in this town, and I think some of it is deserved. I think some of it's not deserved, and so. But if he can finagle that, if he can move that, you're like, okay, now I see why you've had a job for 10 years. Now I see why Charlie Jacobs defends you to the ends of the earth because I see the vision. I think Bruins fans just want to see a vision. You know, like you don't want to be wandering around between 6th and 12th in the conference and go, I don't know, we might be good. Like you want to know what the plan is, right? And I think this is a great time for the Bruins to kind of reset, recalibrate. You got a 25-year-old goalie locked up. You got a 28, 29-year-old superstar winger. You got two defensemen, Hampus and Charlie, that can be really good defensemen. We've seen it in the past. That's a good starting point. Now it's about how do you bring those guys along? How do you maximize that window? And so that's a challenge, I think, for Don Sweeney between this deadline and the start of next season. You know, reset the deck a little bit, bring in some talent, and see what you have. And that's going to be the name of the game, but it's a hard line to walk. And it's one that we haven't seen him do before. So we got to see that come to fruition here.
Yeah, we will see how the Bruins respond this week. But by the time we record next week, episode 300, by the way, of Poke the Bear, who knows? This team could also drop like the next 3 games, or maybe they've won 4 in a row, and maybe our conversation changes whether we like it or not. We'll see. This team, again, has been so Jekyll and Hyde that who knows what to expect.
For episode 300, I'm sending a Trojan horse to Evan Marinofski's apartment. The Trojan horse is filled with peanuts, so he's going to die. He
would be deceased. We would not have a special 3-person panel. He would be gone from the earth. It would have been very much. It would be a fitting encapsulation of how this year has gone. It's been a complete downer every single stretch of the way. But Ty, before we go to episode 300 and Evan's demise, where can we find you on the airwaves? Where can we read your stuff? All that good stuff.
Yeah, you can find me at 985thesportshub.com and on the air on Saturday mornings, 9 to 11 a.m. on the Shaw's and Star Market Hockey Show on 985 The Sports Hub. You can also find me on social media at _Ty Anderson, on Blue Sky Ty-Anderson. I'm getting better about using that. I'm sorry that it's a lot of copy pasting. So if you follow me on both platforms, you kind of see the same thing again and again. I apologize for that. We're working on that. But yeah, you can find me there and basically anywhere in Brighton or Alston. How about yourself?
Yes, you can find my stuff over at boston.com and the Boston Globe. We've covered every step of the way this season with recaps, features, columns, breakdowns, maybe potential charting out plans for this offseason to see what this team ends up doing, because it should be, regardless of how it ends, a fascinating summer for this team in terms of what their next steps are. And if you want to follow me on Twitter, X, whatever the hell it's called, you can at Conor Ryan _93. This was episode 298 of Poke the Bear. You fans have a great rest of your week.